Hello, this is Ericka Mabion with KCPS Homeroom. I am the iSpark CTE coordinator, and I'm here today for our real world learning in STEM. I have my special guest as Emily Rhoden with Bruns McDonnell. Can you tell us your position there?
Hi, Erica. Yes, my name is Emily Rhoden, and I do educational outreach for Bruns McDonnell. I've been there for a little over 9 years now, and basically my job is to introduce STEM learning and STEM initiatives to students K through 12 in the Kansas City metro area and to our regional offices.
Oh, that's awesome. So could you tell us a little bit, how did Bruns McDonnell get involved in STEM education?
Right, so almost 10 years ago, we decided to put on a contest around Kansas City, and we teamed up with Science City, and we had a contest called Battle of the Brains. A lot of you might have heard of it, and you will see exhibits around Science City like you've seen. And we let kids come up with these concepts and a proposal for a new exhibit at Science City. And we saw the hands-on learning and the real-world learning, which I'm not sure we called it that back then, but we saw that taking place. And as we saw it grow and as we saw the excitement, we wanted to make sure we were being more engaging in that, right? Like industry really needed to start teaming up with education to find more experiences like this and really give the classroom and show teachers and show students that what we're doing in school and what we're doing in the real world needs to connect. So that's how it all kind of started.
That is so awesome. The Battle of the Brains is an incredible experience that I had engaged my students with this past year. And of course, I love going to Science City and seeing all the exhibits. And the bonus is knowing that it came from the minds of our students. That's just so incredible. So
right. And it's not just, I was going to say, it's not just high school kids doing this. This is K through 12. We have exhibits in there from students who are in elementary school. That blows my mind, and I absolutely love it.
I just love that too. And I love that you all had the vision and the dedication to making that come to fruition. So why is this so important to Bruns McDonnell?
Okay, so, we have, like I said, when we saw those students, we want those students to come to work go to work for Bruns McDonnell someday, right? So we saw these students as our future workforce. Why not start investing in them now, right? So, and investing in them means foundation dollars. It means time. It means coming up with programs to really delve into their studies and what they're doing, and as well as the teachers, right? So this is the future workforce that we're talking about. There's no better time than when they're young and hungry and curious, and to foster that as they go through kindergarten, first, second, 9, 10, 11, 12, as they go through school. So instead of crying about, hey, we don't have enough people in our workforce, let's do something about it on the front of my head, right? So that's why it's so important.
That's fantastic. You mentioned before about Battle of the Brains, and I'm familiar with that particular program, but what have been some of your other successes and some of your other programs that Bruns McDonnell has started doing?
So first thing I did when I came in is I formulated a formal job shadow program for high school students to come in and have a career conversation with an engineer or an architect or a scientist, and really focus on, is this something that I would want to do? What exactly is engineering? What is it? What is consulting engineering? So they're answering all those questions, right? And they kind of get to see a day in the life of that STEM professional. We also focused on teacher externships, which is kind of like a teacher job shadow, if you will, right? We focused on summer camps. We do a really good job of getting students interested in STEM, and then we do a really awesome job of getting students in an internship once they hit college. But what was that in between time looking like? So we wanted to make sure and keep them connected through summer camps, keeping them engaged with Bruns McDonnell professionals in that capacity. We have evening programs for parents and students to sort of demystify engineering and to really talk about what it is as opposed to what we think it might be about, right? And show how exciting it can be and how life-changing, world-changing, how necessary it is, right? So we talk about all the really cool, fun stuff because sometimes I don't think students can grasp that that's the engineers that we have in this world really make everything that we do, right? And now we need students to come up with how do we make that better? How can we make things easier? How do we make things more attainable for all people in all of the world, right? Safe drinking water, access to different things. So that's what we want to make it about, right? These are the kids of this next generation and on and on and on. They have the responsibility of changing this world and making it better. And we want to be a part of that for them, right? And we want to help foster the development and the thinking and keeping that curiosity and keeping that excitement as they go through school. So I digress, but job shadowing, the summer camps, evening programs. We have a really cool new program coming out for teachers, especially in that K-6 realm, called an Early Educator Fellowship, where we're really focused on the thinking of students and flipping our classroom, not the content so much as how we're teaching it, right? And giving the opportunity for project-based learning. And what are some real-world problems that are out there that students could solve even in the classroom, right? So that's what, those are some of the different programs that we have, along with, hey, let's get in the classroom and talk about what we do, and maybe let's judge some projects that are already going on, some super cool are going on in the classroom. So really about developing relationships with teachers too.
I love all that you said about how you really immerse students and their families in just becoming aware of just all the components of what goes on at Bruns McDonnell, even to the extent that people don't even really think about like engineering. They may only think about one type of engineering. You've got civil engineering, and there's just so many different dynamics. And those can be challenges or barriers for people that are trying to go in a different path. So could you really kind of get into some of the other challenges that you've come up against or that you've discovered throughout this time of introducing these programs?
Right. So one thing that was challenging for me at the start was thinking outside the box of who we talk to, right? It was really easy to connect the dots to Project Lead the Way teachers, for example, or engineering class teachers, those who are teaching those concepts already, physics teachers. But we really wanted to look at what some students don't know what they don't know, right? So why can't we get involved in a math class? Why can't we look at students even in an English class, right? And talk about, hey, this is what STEM is. This is what STEM stands for, right? Because 9 years ago, it wasn't as prevalent as it is today. And here's what engineering is, you guys. It's not the concept that you thought in your head. They don't just drive trains. They don't just build buildings. They don't just build roads. So there's so many other things that go on, and we want to reach the students who don't know what they don't know. So let's introduce it to all students, not just ones who kind of have an affinity to it or want to, their mom or dad did it, right? So I kind of have a knowledge of it. We wanted to reach those students who maybe didn't even have a clue that was what an engineer was, or that they did more than drive trains or build buildings, right?
Right.
So that was one of our biggest challenges was how do we reach all the students, right? So.
Yeah, I have a thing that I really believe in, and that's you cannot be what you do not see. And it really sounds like you all are really delving into that and making that connection to their real world learning. So could you tell us how more ways that real world learning pertains to Bruns and McDonnell specifically, and how you make those impacts? You mentioned having internships and fellowships for teachers and students, but could you get a little bit more specific about the real world learning aspect? Because this is the real world learning show.
No, and it is one thing that we are really trying to focus on. You hear about these client connected projects. You hear about just different types of experiences, and job shadowing is absolutely one of those. And I think summer camps is also one of those because they get to work on a project. But I have been finding, and this isn't just in Kansas City, Ericka. This is like, I had an engineer in Vancouver that was like, okay, we have, and they didn't call it client connected project, right? But it's basically helping these students. They have to do a project. And so it's saying, hey, we had this project, these engineers that they worked on this project. Could we make it so that a student or a group of students work on this project at school? And we'll give them these parameters, right? But that they can work on it as well. These students are getting a chance to work in teams. Everything we do at Bruns McDonnell is done in teams. We are not siloed out, right? These students have to learn how to work with people that they don't necessarily agree with. They have to work with their best friend. I mean, I have a problem with that, right? I will go off on a tangent and start chatting away, but how do we keep focused on a project? How do we communicate effectively in a project? And it's really starting to look at how can I be a part of a project, lead a project, what's my part in that project, and how to then learn how to solve the problem, hear people out, recognize no bad ideas from the start. How do we brainstorm? How do we then communicate with our clients and the outside realm? How do we pitch our ideas? So there's lots of things that go around to it, including the project itself, right? We wanted to make that fun. So it can do, and so we've been kind of brainstorming some client connected projects just at Bruns McDonnell. And some crazy ones like, where would we put a new parking garage? That's a problem. Could students come up with, what's the safety around Bruns McDonnell? We have a lot of Bruns McDonnell folks that walk around our building at lunch. If you ever drive by our building off Ward Parkway, you'll see a lot of walkers. And so is it safe? What are the safety measures that need to be kept in mind? Looking at stormwater retention and stormwater ponding, like around Bruns. So we've been kind of thinking about what's that Bruns and that. Also then focusing on what are our clients doing and sort of introducing those concepts. So client connected projects is kind of a big focus for us right now. And we have some cool ones coming down the pipe. So that we can teach these concepts of STEM, right? Engineering and excitement in STEM. And then the concept of how it works in a team atmosphere and bringing that all together. Because communicating effectively is so important throughout all of this. So.
Yes, I acknowledge that so much, that you really focus on communicating and the teamwork aspect, and we really try to incorporate that in classrooms, but sometimes the replication of those dynamics can feel artificial without something tangible, and the kids are just like, you're just making this up and this is not real and this is not authentic. So I really appreciate that it's something that these are things that really happen in the real world, and so students can really have that connection, and then they have that grown-up mentor that is actually doing that in the workforce. So I really see that the learning can take place in a manner that couldn't typically take place in the traditional classroom setting. So in addition to communicating effectively and working in a team, what are some of the other skills that you think our students need in order to kind of go through that process of gaining all of these skills in a real world learning capacity?
Okay, so these are some of my favorite ones because these aren't necessarily ones that we always talk about. We always talk about communication, right? Communication here, communication there. Written, oral, all of those things. Being a self-starter, seeing the problems as they come about, wanting to problem solve, thinking the ideas through. How do we brainstorm? How do we respect others' opinions, right?
That's huge.
Right. So even that respect factor. Fostering your curiosity. I think sometimes that can get squelched as we go through our academic career because we see these boundaries, right? And we've even seen that in Battle of the Brains, right? These elementary kids, boom, they are out there. They want to build a 16-story volcano with lava spewing out of it every hour, right? Right? Why wouldn't you? And the secondary kids are like, no, that's not going to work, But how do you find that happy medium where you still develop that curiosity and that brainstorming and that excitement without squelching it to, and then one of the biggest things that we like to look at too is how do we come back from failure? How do we look at failure in a more positive light, right? Just because something doesn't work the first time or your team says that might not be the best idea for this, how do we come back from that? And how do we learn that failure isn't the end of the world? Failure doesn't mean you're failure as a person, right? It means that you need to take that and pick that up and learn from it to then do something better the next time around.
Right. That's so awesome. I have a thing I call in my classroom is productive struggle. So we're going to go through those struggles and we're going to stick together and we're going to look at what didn't work and build on it and find out how we continue to move forward and take in those things that are around us to help us go to that next level, take in that criticism, take in those constraints and see how we can keep going in order to make that happen. And I'm so grateful that you all at Bruns McDonnell are just coming into the ecosystem of education and kind of really shattering all the boundaries that traditionally existed and then adding these components that kids can really see, because kids are so smart now. They're like, is this for a grade? And why do we have to do this? And does it really matter? And those are the things that the real world learning components and the STEM, bringing those curiosities that you said, those inclinations, not squelching down their curiosities, and they're like, oh, well, I bet I could do this. And they don't have any constraints regarding that. The sky is the limit. So I'm really excited about all of the things that you all are doing and how you're contributing to not just students, but the parents and the teachers. It's kind of like a home run. First, second, and third base. Slide into the plate and we're ready to go.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It takes all of us, right? And so in recognizing that, we want to make sure that we're touching, and exposing this to all of those folks. And because parents can be a big factor and a big influence on what a student decides to look at as they graduate high school. And what path do they want to go down in this? And parents can have a big influence on that. I think teachers have a really huge influence on that too, Ericka, and I don't think teachers get that sometimes. So we want to make sure we're showing this to all of those folks. You're right. So.
That's really awesome. Well, Emily Rhoden, I really appreciate you bringing all of your passion and your enthusiasm for what you do at Bruns McDonnell and really making it to come to life, because I do really feel like that it's really changing everything, especially all of my experiences of going to Science City. And I have grown children and we go to Science City with my grown children. And I'm like, look at this and this is so cool. And look at all the learning that we continue to do. So we can never stop learning. We continue to grow. And I appreciate the contributions that you all are making to our educational ecosystem. Thank you so much for being a part of Real World Learning with STEM on KCPS Homeroom. And we will see you again. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.